Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Get Coach podcast. If you're new, welcome. My name's Kate, and to all the returning subscribers, thank you for your continual support. We really appreciate you. So, today is a very special day here on the Get Coach podcast because we have our very first male guest. I had a very interesting conversation with Takondra Mengezi. He goes by TK on how to grow and advance your career. And he had some very interesting points to share on this subject, and I feel they can be applied across all industries. And he also shared about how he managed to grow and advance his own career. And he gives some tips on networking and ensuring you get that promotion. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Hi, TK. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're our first male guest, so this is a monumental day for us on the GC podcast. How are you?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I wasn't aware I'm the first male guest. So, yeah, super honored to be part of the podcast. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, very glad to have you here. And I'm very excited about this conversation. Thank you for agreeing to come on and to coach our guests, our viewers and listeners on this topic. So, yeah, before we kick off, just to get us better acquainted with yourself, who is Takondra Mengezi outside of the office first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. No, that's a great starting point. So first and foremost, I'm a Malawian man based in the capital city of Lilongwe. In my mid-30s, not going to disclose where exactly in the 30s I am, but obviously with that, I'm basically knee deep in this adventure that we call adulting, right? And I think being part of this Get Coach podcast where you're kind of, trying to teach young adults about, life hacking and sort of like practical tools they can use in their day-to-day life. I feel, that makes me well suited to be here so that I can share a little bit about what I've learned so far in my career, in the spirit of helping others. So yeah, I think that's basically why I'm here. And I think overall, I'm a husband to a gorgeous and determined lady, so I consider myself a lucky man. And on top of that, I'm the middle child in a family of 2 kids and, 5 of us with the parents. And also having had the opportunity to live in several countries and spend a lot of time, especially early in my formative years outside of my home country of Malawi. I feel like that's given me a unique perspective in terms of, the usual gender roles and gender norms that we tend to have, in our African settings. So I think that's a little bit about me. I think in terms of other interests, I'm really much into fitness. I dabble a bit. I dabble a bit as a certified personal trainer in my free time. So yeah, I'm usually in the gym. So most people can find me at my local gym, which is Fitness Studio in Area 6 in Lilongwe. So shout out Fitness Studio. I think probably the best gym in the city, maybe in the country. Good vibes, really cool people there. And apart from that, I've recently also got into running. So I'm currently training for a half marathon this year. Possibly, and then possibly a full marathon next year if I'm able to stay healthy. But before all of that, I think my background in sports is really from basketball. So I've played competitive basketball within and outside Malawi at all levels, including the top men's league. And also had the pleasure and privilege to be part of the Malawi national team a couple of years back in my younger days. So yeah, I think that's been sort of what really taught me a lot about, the main skills that you tend to learn from athletics, right? Sort of punctuality, being on time, being part of a team, having to be with people and sort of make things happen even on the days when you don't feel like it, right? So I think
discipline.
All of that has really given me, I think, really unique tools and perspectives that I've now been able to channel into my career. And I think apart from that sort of more serious stuff, when I'm just chilling, enjoying Netflixing and chilling just
Of
like the next
course.
person. Yeah, playing video games,
Yeah.
reading books, doing short courses in terms of personal and professional development. So yeah, in short, yeah, that's a little bit of an intro about, who I am.
Yeah, sounds very busy, I must say. Like you are busy. Okay, great. So, while I was stalking you, doing a little bit of research about you, I did see the fitness, like your Instagram page. If you allow us to link it, we're gonna put it on. But yeah, very inspiring, the commitment. You can see just from looking at your LinkedIn, your Instagram, what you are passionate about, you know? So yeah, your intro here fits in very nicely with what I saw. So today I'd like us to kind of dissect and go through your career growth and the secret sauce of your career development. I'd like you to please coach our viewers and listeners on how you can go about doing this like you have. Just looking at your page, like you've held a lot of positions, you've had a lot of internal promotions and that sort of thing. So maybe just a brief history of your career so we can see everything in context. And then, yeah, like I saw you've had over 10 roles already in your career so far. So kind of just, yeah, let us know how you grew from where you were sort of starting out. And was your first job in Malawi, by the way, or was it overseas? And yeah, just coach us on how one can go about doing this for the younger ones, or even people like me. Yeah, can learn something from this.
Great. No, thanks so much. And I think this is actually a good place to start because it's also an opportunity for self-reflection, because I actually didn't realize I've had, over 10 roles in my career, because as you're kind of living it, you're not really counting, right? So yeah, I think that's really interesting and super exciting. So yeah, I think in terms of my career, I mean, I've always been somebody, even from a young age, where I was looking to solve problems, because I realized that being able to solve problems, I'd be able to get things done. And even as a young kid, I'd be able to make money, right, on the side where I can, buy video games, buy comics, pay for music, do fun things as a kid. So yeah, I think I've always been somebody who is sort of enterprise minded. My career introduction was really in tech support. So straight out of college, I was able to land a position as a systems administrator at one of the larger retail chains in Malawi at that time, able to actually grow to become the IT manager at that organization, which actually enabled, I should say it actually required being able to know what everybody does, being able to solve their problems, and sort of using IT as just an enabler of problem solving. So from there, unfortunately, I think that organization had some financial troubles and there was a bit of a downsizing, and eventually they closed down. But luckily at that point, I was able to move to the NGO sector, and I would say this is where I really identified my true passion, which is the health sector, specifically digital health, which is sort of the domain or industry that I'm in now. But once I did that for a while, I realized in terms of the tech support stuff, like I knew it and I was really good at it and I was really comfortable. And what I really wanted to get into was project management at that point, because I think the project managers that I would observe were always like the cool kids, right? Like they dressed well because they always had like client meetings and client presentations. They were always really, had great communication skills. They had amazing soft skills. And luckily at the organization I was in, they were actually establishing a project management function. I should say product management function, which is sort of similar. And so they had internal openings. We competed for them, and 2 of us were actually successful and basically moved over to start, setting up these systems within this new domain. in this new department. And that was really my introduction to project management from an IT perspective, from a digital perspective. And that's really sort of how I've grown within the industry. I reached to a point where I pretty much hit a glass ceiling, right? So I could see where I wanted to go to, but I couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And it's not really that anybody was at fault. It's not that the organization was not looking to ensure that people grow, but I just got to that point where I couldn't really grow any further in that specific scenario. So luckily at that point, because of, I think I already mentioned that I had a network that was existing because of other things that I was involved in, whether it was, sports or athletics, whether it was through, my basketball career and things I was doing on the basketball front, people I would get to meet, people I would get to know, and who would really see me as a high performer in that other domain.
Yeah.
And then when we would get to know each other, excuse me, when we would get to know each other and now start talking about careers and tech and innovation, they would actually realize that this person, has a whole other life, and possibly there are other opportunities that he can actually be a part of. There are other problems that he can actually help us to solve. So in short, for me to actually make a jump into the international space, for me to actually secure my first global role, it was actually through somebody I met on the athletic side, and they actually gave me opening for another organization where they were looking for a project manager at that time.
I think my biggest takeaway from what you've said here is you used a non-professional network to get and to push your career to the next step. Which just shows you that, it's not only the serious LinkedIn conferences type of networks, Toastmasters, whatever. It could also be, in something you're passionate about. And for you, it's sports, it's athletics. And I think maintaining that integrity and, just being a stellar human being in different settings, and to allow people to see your worth outside of, let's say I'm in a cooking club and, I'm cooking with the CEO of JP Morgan, but they're like, oh, I feel like Kate is, let me have a conversation. So for me, that's the biggest takeaway. Like, you use this to make this other thing work for you. So yeah, I absolutely love that. So then did you move? So you got the role? Yeah, what happened next?
Right. So I got the role, and obviously I think as a young person, the hard part right now, right at that moment, is resigning, right? Letting go of your current employer who has done so much for you, who has believed in you as a young person, giving you so many opportunities. And I think that's where the first piece of advice would sort of start coming in now, that I think a lot of young people take too long to make that first jump because of loyalty, right? So we're loyal to that first big organization or that second big organization that sort of gives you your dream job, especially when they're looked at in high esteem within the industry that you're in. And at that organization, you have managers, you have mentors, you have friends, and it becomes really difficult for you to make the move. And just to give a bit of context, I think initially when I had that opportunity, I moved to Ghana for a couple of months in terms of integrating with the central team and sort of onboarding and learning all the necessary skills to be able to do the job. And then from there, I actually moved to Rwanda, where I was one of two project managers that actually established the project management hub for the East and Southern Africa regions. So yeah, it was a really great opportunity, a lot of learnings, and really having to make decisions on the fly and be able to, solve my own personal problems.
Yeah.
So I think really within that first year, once you're in a new role, you have to become an expert at whatever you're doing. And that really means, learning as you're doing the job, learning from your counterparts, and I think even identifying high performers within the organization that you can emulate, right? And at this point, I'm not really talking about identifying mentors, because why should you approach a mentor when you haven't even achieved anything yet?
Yes.
Because mentors also want to be associated with achievers and high performers, right? So it's more observing and really becoming an expert in terms of that specific role. And once you have become an expert, I think the next level is really solving problems for your colleagues and even for your manager, right? So I really believe the quickest way to get promoted is learn your manager's job, learn your boss's job, solve their problems, and also create time for them to be able to focus on the next level. Yeah, another task or the next level. Because if they get promoted and you're already solving their problem or you already know their job, then it's very easy for you to actually transition to that next role when they move to the next role. So those are specific examples of how I've actually been able to move up. I've had opportunities where, my boss gets promoted, there's an opening within that department, I'm able to qualify for it, or maybe not right away. Maybe they bring in someone from outside, but after a certain amount of time, the person is not a good fit. You're now able to get an opportunity because they might want to actually, start at home and find out if there's somebody who's actually already there, who has the skills and, capabilities to be able to perform in that specific job function.
Yeah.
Another thing I think that is really important is there's small administrative things that you have to tick off within an organization. So, you have performance reviews, you have things like punctuality and attendance. I think in a previous podcast that you had, you actually talked about how timekeeping and punctuality is so important, right? So I think as you want to grow within a role, you also have to develop personal values and sort of morals that guide how you work. So a few of them that I have is, for example, I'll try my best to make sure I'm not late for a work meeting, especially because a lot of the roles I've had in this organization have been either remote roles or a hybrid, and I think it's very crucial for you to be punctual, especially when it's a remote role, because that is really what people notice, right? If you show up late to an online meeting, if you're late to submit a document, in a shared portal or a shared drive, like, people are going to notice. There are timestamps. You can't sneak into the back of the room and pretend you're already there. So it's very different. But you can apply it to sort of an in-person environment. That timekeeping is very critical. Another value that I have in terms of remote working is I try my best to always have my camera on, unless maybe if I have connectivity issues. So when I'm working with my teams, when I'm doing my weekly one-on-ones with my team members, if I'm speaking with a client, I'm really going to try my best to have my camera on. And because there's a certain level of accountability, it allows me to be more attentive. It allows us to actually form a closer bond, although we're not in the same room. And I just feel like that's really good for business and working together. I think the final thing as well, in terms of growing within a certain position, is the fact that you have to let people know that you're looking for a new challenge, right? You have to let them know that you want to be promoted, that maybe you're bored with what you're doing. And in an extreme case, you can even let them know that, hey, I might be looking to make a change if I'm not able to get that opportunity within this organization that I'm in. So those are not easy conversations to have with your manager, but I feel most managers appreciate somebody who is introspective. Somebody who is introspective and who actually knows what they want to do.
I love all this. I just want to kind of sum it up nicely so that our viewers and listeners if anybody missed anything, right? And you can add to this. So you say it's to grow, basically solve your boss's problems, or, you know, like that's the main anchor who's going to determine your growth, right? Unless he's like trying to hinder your growth for some weird reason. But I absolutely love that. Like, he's the one to impress at the end of the day. And then the second one that I really want to hone in on, like, this is so important. I just want to make sure people don't miss it. In this virtual world, especially for us ladies, right? Like, having your camera on, like, oh, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. Like, and this is something that I've had to consciously say to myself as well, that I need to always have my camera on. And nowadays it's actually flipped to the other side to say, oh, why does this person have their camera on? Who do they think they are? You know, like, it's actually, you know, it's a weird thing that's going on. But I really agree with you that when your camera is not on, you're not focused. You could be checking your WhatsApp messages. You could miss an important point. It makes you more present if you have your camera on. And in a hybrid role, and especially for you who sometimes is fully remote, we can forget who you are. I can tell you now, we go to the office twice a week. There are some colleagues that I forget exist because they never speak up in meetings and they don't switch on their cameras, which brings me to the third point. And with all the sort of career growth, YouTube things that I've been watching, everybody speaks to always speaking up in a meeting, you know, even if it's to echo back what somebody said, just to say, you know, I just want to, you know, cement this point that you said. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said ABC, because people can forget you exist in this virtual world if your camera is not on, and two, you're never commenting in a meeting. So I just wanted to make sure our viewers and listeners grasp that. And then the third thing is to voice your desire to grow. I think that's so important. Some people will sit there complaining about how they're not getting the career growth, but you're not telling anybody about it. You're complaining to your friends, but do your superiors, do the people in your organization know that you are making the moves or making an effort to grow, right? Because they also say, and I don't know if you agree with this, that a promotion is only 30% your work ethic or something, and then a bigger chunk is networking, and a bigger chunk is, do they even like you, right?
I'd even say less than 30%. 30%
really?
is even lower than that.
Yeah. So I think these 3 points were really key, and we're gonna put them on the screen as well. And thank you for sharing that.
Great. And just to also add to that willingness to grow, as much as you can be willing, I feel like you really need what I call sponsors and people to also advocate for you. So I think as young people, we tend to gravitate towards having mentors where, you know, they can shoot you a vacancy, you can put them as a reference on your CV, you can have career discussions, but you really need a sponsor who is really somebody who's going to speak for you when you're not in the room, because a lot of these decisions, like I actually became shocked to realize how quickly career growth and sort of promotional decisions get made, right? It can literally be a 30-second conversation that, hey, we have this opening, like, who on your team is ready for this? And a name will just come up.
And that's
and
it.
Literally, it's as simple as that. And people will say, oh yeah, this is that young woman who gave this presentation, you know, during last week's, you know, global meeting. Yeah, I think she's great. Let's give her a try. And literally, it is that simple. So if you don't have those sponsors who are going to speak for you and sort of push things, you know, in those closed door meetings, in those closed rooms, it's really difficult for you to grow. And I feel, honestly, I really have to thank a lot of the managers and leaders that I've had, because I can honestly say I've had people who've advocated for me. They've given me opportunities and they've spoken good things about me in rooms where I was not in. And honestly, that is why, that is exactly why I was able to have, opportunities for career advancement.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just really something for young people to think about, that, as you said, as much as we complain to our friends, we identify mentors to help us grow, but they're not the decision makers at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Again, who knows you and do they like you? So, yeah.
The second piece of advice I want to link this with is really around problem solving, but also being willing to take on additional responsibilities where you might not get the credit for them. You might not even get a pay increase. You might not get compensated for that additional work, but you decide to actually delay gratification so that you can actually grow, right? So I'll give a very specific example of how this promotion sort of came about. So we had another manager within the department who was unwell for a couple of weeks, and at that point she took some extended time off, and the senior manager within that department basically asked if there was somebody who was willing to take up some additional tasks, provide some cover on some projects, and really provide cover, do some administrative duties that this person was carrying out. And really, honestly, people were not interested because it's the usual questions, right? That, oh, this is not my work, this is somebody else's work. Even if I do a good job, like, they're gonna get the credit. There's no bonus for me at the end of the year, or I'm not getting any type of acting allowance or anything of that nature to do this work. So people were not really interested in taking up that opportunity. And it's something I jumped at. I saw it as a good opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to learn the management skills, to actually immediately start supporting some other team members who were a bit more junior to me at that point. And basically what happened is, to make a long story short, eventually, the manager recovered. She was able to come back to work. And after a couple of months, when there was a need for the team to actually grow and split up and to have another manager manage one of the other teams, when the opportunity came about, literally I was the only person where in people's minds they felt like, it made sense. They felt like the job was really meant for me. And although there was quite an open sort of recruitment policy and process within the organization, when I actually applied for the job and went through the interview process, I later found out I was the only candidate. Like, people didn't even attempt because they figured like this job sounds like what TK is already doing. So like, let's just sort of leave it for him, right? So I think that's just a very specific example that you have to be willing to do things that are not your responsibility, and you have to be able to sort of have wins, which you're never going to get the credit for. Maybe the credit goes to the client or the partner or another colleague, but at the end of the day, that you're building up skills. And honestly, the people who matter, they notice, because they will actually have conversations where they'll say, this person took on this project, it wasn't their project, and maybe they turned it around.
All right, great. So to wrap up, I'd like to get into two more questions. And one of them is, how do you get your resume, yourself, to just stand out in order to get shortlisted for that interview? I believe that's the hardest part, right? To actually get yourself in front of that interview panel. And personally, I believe that when you get called for an interview, they already know you can do the job. They just want to see if they like you, if they vibe with you, right? So the pre-work, what's your best advice in getting picked?
Great. No, that's a really great question. And I think the big thing is really about understanding the requirements of the application. So I think as somebody where I've been part of recruiting teams, I've, done shortlisting, I've interviewed people, as well as also been successful in the interview process. I think a lot of young people and even really experienced career professionals are guilty of this. They really don't read the instructions in terms of the application,
Yes.
right? And that is really a red flag, because there are organizations where they want a specific format. They want you to name the documents in a certain way. And other organizations even use software for shortlisting, right? So they're looking for specific keywords and key phrases that have to be part of your cover letter and part of your CV. And honestly, if you miss those out, like, you don't stand a chance to, to get shortlisted for an opportunity. On top of that, I feel like when you structure the application, you have to be really authentic. And in terms of the authenticity, I feel if you're applying for a job or an organization where you're not passionate about what they do, I really believe that's going to come out, right? You're not going to be enthusiastic in the application. It's going to be a very generic application and very flat. And yeah, so really, I feel like that talks about, go for things you're passionate for. We have one life to live.
Yeah.
It's not really, I wouldn't really advise going for a certain opportunity just from a monetary or financial perspective. Your personal values, as well as mission and aspirations for your life and career, have to really closely mirror the work that the organization is doing, right? And I think the other things, they're simple things like make sure you don't have grammatical and spelling mistakes. Make sure the formatting is well done. I think, I think my current CV is probably a 1-pager or a 2-pager, just out of personal preferences.
With all those
Other
roles.
people can have, yeah, exactly. So other people can have, so many pages, because really, as you said, the employer knows you can do the job, right? The potential employer, rather. And most of the discussions will happen as part of the actual interview process. So in your CV, really, you have to show not really your roles and responsibilities, but your key achievements, right?
I agree. And I think where people get it wrong, and I'm guilty of this, is the work of an application, right? We all get extremely lazy to do the cover letter, to tailor your resume to the role you're applying to. It's a lot of work. But I feel like as I've grown, I've come to the realization that recruiters, you get millions of applications, right? Thousands, hundreds. So I think there's value in taking your time to tailor the resume to the job, to make a good, authentic cover letter, like you said, instead of just, shooting and hoping something sticks and you get called for an interview.
Exactly.
So, yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I think what you also nailed is the fact that every cover letter and CV has to be specifically tailored for that job, right? So really, I really advise people to not send out general applications, tailor it, make sure you've read through it, it has the keywords. And I think on top of that, the biggest thing is also to ensure that, you follow the instructions. If they want a PDF document, make sure it's a PDF document. If they want you to upload it in a certain portal, make sure you do that, because I've also experienced situations where maybe I share somebody a certain opening at my company, and they're sending me an application package, and really, I'll have to tell them like, hey, can you apply through the portal? Like, it's part of the process is for you to follow the instructions. If you're sending me the package, already that's a red flag, because it looks like you want some type of favoritism, and really that just doesn't really work for hiring managers. I think let's add to that. I feel like in terms of the whole mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship, I think we also have to look at the fact that in the technology age, like we have access to mentors where we actually don't even have to talk to them, right? So we can watch podcasts, we can read books, we can watch YouTube videos. Like, I have so many mentors where they don't even know they're my mentor, because I don't have to speak to them. I can consume content and learn from them. apply to my life. Whatever is working, I can keep it. Whatever is not working, I can discard it.
Yes.
And I think that's something that has worked really well for me. Honestly, I can't say, I mean, I have people who I look up to in my profession. I have people who have coached me, but I can't really say I have that one mentor where I owe them credit for the things that I've achieved. But I have a collection of mentors that I'm able to access because of technology.
I love that. That is, as Oprah would say, a tweetable moment. Like, you can have mentors for different things in life too, you know, not just career-wise. I absolutely love that. That's amazing. Okay, no, all this was very, very valuable. To sort of wrap up everything in a nice bow, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't spoken about?
Yeah, I think overall it's more of a summary. I think in terms to grow in your career as a young person, you have to really identify your passion and get into an industry where you feel is closely aligned with your personal values, your aspirations. And that can be not just on the social aspect, it can be financial, it can be a certain lifestyle or standard you want to live. It can be giving back to your community and helping, you know, improve lives, solve problems, bring in a new way of doing things. But it's really important to identify that at a young age because it lets you, or I should say, it encourages you to end up in situations or in organizations where you're actually able to perform well, show value, and have opportunities for you to grow. And from there, I think once you do have the opportunity, you're entrusted with a certain responsibility. You're really a custodian, right? So you're a brand. You have to think of yourself as a brand, and that means every time you show up for work, every time you walk into a room, even in your personal life, you're really a brand, and you have to think about punctuality. You have to think about how you look, how you dress. You know, as human beings, we are psychological and emotional creatures. And even in terms of opportunities, sometimes the person who dresses better or who, you know, is better at speaking, has developed, you know, soft skills and emotional intelligence is more likely to secure a job or a promotion over somebody who has better technical skills. So soft skills, leveraging your networks as well in terms of, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to people, but reach out to them as a person of value, right? And I think overall what has really been helpful for me is really having a daily routine. I think we didn't really talk about having sort of like a morning routine that includes some type of, you know, learning and development, some type of spirituality if you're a believer, something to center you and sort of ground you, right? So there's certain things that I do. I practice gratitude every morning, so I do gratitude journaling. I pray. I usually like to get in some type of morning run. I have to have my coffee, and all of this is even before like opening up any type of work email. So when you have that positive morning routine, instead of being reactive, you're proactive, you're in charge of your schedule. So even if I open my morning, say I open my email and there are so many disasters that I have to sort of fix, already I know, like, hold on, in terms of my calendar, these are the priorities for today. So although this is an emergency, yes, I'll handle it, but it's not the main thing that I have to get done today.
Right now.
And I think if you don't have a morning routine, you get into sort of a habit of responding to different issues and crises as they happen, right? Which is very dangerous because nobody really cares if you attend to emergencies, but what they care about is, are you delivering according to the things that you have agreed? And that's the most important thing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I love that. And the morning routine, very important. And not letting the day happen to you, but, you know, taking control. Because
exactly, and it's tough. I mean, as young professionals, we go through that. We go through a time where you're reacting to things and you're super stressed. And I think, with age comes wisdom, and you're able to learn new skills and do things better and, apply them to your day-to-day life.
Okay, so we like to end off these things with some lighter questions. The first one's not so light, but what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned so far? So if you had a time machine and you could go back a few years at a certain point in your life, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself?
Awesome. I love that question. And I think this is something that I've thought about, so it's easy for me to answer. So I'll give a two-part answer.
Okay.
I think the first one is really around time. Time is really valuable. And I feel as young people, we really tend to underutilize the time that we have. And not really to freak people out, because, we're still here. As long as God keeps us and, gives us another chance at life, we're still here. We have another day to live and, another battle to fight, as time goes. But as young people, we tend to waste time in that. I look at moments in life, which I call in-between moments. So let's say you finish school, you're waiting to go to uni, and you're not really doing anything, right? You're really in between. You don't even know maybe what you want to study. Maybe your family or your friends out of peer pressure have pushed you towards a certain course, and you sign up for all the courses that your friends are going to take. And I feel like that's also a critical moment for you now to start developing skills, to actually get some type of practical experience that is going to help you later on in life. Yeah, in short, I think safeguarding your time and making good use of time is really important. And really, as much as young people, we want to watch movies, play video games, hang out with our friends, but we also have to figure out ways in which we can learn skills, earn money rather. And I know in the settings that we've grown up in, especially in Africa, it's very difficult because it's hard for young people to get any type of work experience outside of being, a full graduate. But these are things to think about. The second thing I think is around friendships and the circles that we have, right? Not necessarily to say I regret like certain circles I've been in or certain friendships that I've had, but there are a lot of friendships that are really non-beneficial in terms of career, right? They satisfy us from a belonging needs standpoint or from a social standpoint, or we say, this was my best friend since primary school. I've known this person all my life. They're not really bringing value to your life. So I think really looking at friendships, and it's tough. Sometimes having to let go of friendships that have become non-productive, or maybe somebody who's very negative and very toxic and is actually sapping with positive energy. And to be honest, I can say the time my career really took off is where I made a conscious decision to actually isolate myself and focus on my career. And as a result, I actually lost out on some friendships. And this has been both in the professional career, even being as an athlete in the athletic career, where you have to train, you have to eat healthy, you have to be in great shape. So obviously you're not really going out to parties, you're not drinking every weekend, you're not smoking, you're not hanging out and chasing girls. And that is what your friends are doing at a young age. And by you not really partaking in these things and being more focused, more driven, you tend to become sort of like a weirdo or a bit eccentric amongst your peers. But when you look at it, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, these same people are now coming to you asking for career advice, asking for introductions to be made, and not really to gloat or to look at it from sort of a higher perspective, but some of those decisions are really tough, but they have to be made. So, safeguarding your time very jealously, and being picky and choosy with your friends and your circle and the people that you spend time with.
Couldn't agree more. So on a lighter note, you mentioned in the very beginning, you do unwind with Netflix, you read a lot, you're an avid reader. So maybe just to conclude, what Netflix shows are you currently binging on, and what books are you currently reading?
Great fun question. So in terms of Netflix, I'm big on documentaries and I watch a lot of things. So I think I actually got my phone here so I can just look through like what I've been currently watching. There was something to do with the pharmaceutical industry. I think it was called
Painkiller.
Painkiller. Yeah, I watched Painkiller. That was really cool.
Okay.
So let's see. I was watching two documentaries. This is Pop, which is just around the music industry, and I think another one called High Score, just talking about the history of video games and sort of video game development. But I think apart from that, in the past, I've watched the big ones that I've really enjoyed. I mean, everybody watched Money Heist, I think, when we were all, in lockdown during that time. Also Squid Game, which was sort of like a really sick, sadistic game. Recently, I really enjoyed Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is awesome. And yeah, I think just like it's sort of like gave me my nerd fix because I really started looking at sort of like the chemistry and figuring out like how to make methamphetamine, which is a completely bad idea in terms of doing that. I think the spin-off is Better Call Saul. So I started watching Better Call Saul, which is also, really interesting. But yeah, I think overall, I try and watch things which are a little bit more productive. So I think that's why I lean towards, documentaries. In terms of books, I like a lot of not really self-help books, but I like nonfiction and sort of life coaching. So I've been reading one of Obama's books, A Promised Land. So that's something which I should be finished, but it's taken me a long time to actually get through it because it's a really quite a thick book. Apart from that, I think I really enjoy the classics in terms of sort of financial management and sort of just the overall mindset of, leading a productive life. So I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Recently, I was reading another, I'm forgetting the title of the book, but it's another book around financial management and just making good financial decisions. The classics that I also enjoy are things to do with putting you in sort of like a battle mindset. So I really enjoy The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
I still haven't read that.
Yeah. Okay. That's an awesome book. And also the 48 Laws of Power I think it's by Robert Greene, if I'm not mistaken. Those are things which you can really apply to your career because career growth and progression can be cutthroat sometimes, right? So you need those tips that, in the heat of battle, I think there's certain tips where they say actually, and I think I've applied it to my life and career because they actually say a trustee or a worthy enemy is somebody you can actually use and who you can actually I want to say this properly. Basically, a trustee enemy can do more for you than a trusted friend. So you can look at that in terms of your career, that somebody who maybe doesn't like you but sees your value and knows that you're good at what you do, when the opportunity comes up, they must say, hey, I don't like this person, but they're good at their job. Rather than a friend who might love you, but if a time comes to make a recommendation, they might not even think of you because they haven't thought about you in that, in that new role, in that new context where you're more successful than them, for example. So I think that's just a very specific example of how things that you read and sort of learn about in books can be applied to, to your life.
Okay. Love that. I've definitely taken note of some of those other books I need to read. But yeah, this was great, TK. Thank you for making the time to come on the podcast. Yeah, really appreciated. Valuable advice. I'm so sure that it's gonna help some people out there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, really happy to be the male guest, first male guest rather. And
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah, we get a bit more of a gender balance,
Yes,
going
going
forward
forward.
so that, the men can also start, being
Come
part of
on.
this, sharing what they know and
Yeah.
also kind of learning from other men. So yeah, love the podcast. Amazing job. Keep it up and definitely, yeah, we're listening.
Thank you. And we hope to see you again for another topic. Already have one in mind. So, yeah, hope to have you
Yeah,
back.
sounds good. Great. Speak to you soon. Have a good
All
one.
right. You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Well, that's it for that episode. Thank you for tuning in. I hope it was beneficial for you all. Thank you, TK, for coming on the podcast. We hope to see you again for that other topic I spoke about. And to all our subscribers, remember to like, share with your friends. And also, if you have a topic that you feel strongly about and that you would like to come on the podcast and coach other young adults on, please send us an email on info@getcoachpodcast.co.za or just send us a DM on Instagram and we'll get back to you. Would really love to see more topics on the podcast. Feel free to reach out and have your YouTube debut, okay? All right, have an awesome weekend and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye.